Now, Peter Drucker, whom I had a chance to study with at Claremont University a number of years ago when I was getting my executive MBA, he said the only valid definition of a business purpose is to create and keep a customer. Now, for conscious capitalism, we certainly love that. We think that's a great place to start. I think it's not broad enough. But what I love about it is he also then went on to say that maximize shareholder return is one of the more damaging statements ever made about a business, because it instantly puts you at odds and in competition with all the rest of your community, with your employees, with your customers, the community. If I'm here to exist only to get a maximum amount for one very small part of my circle of community, then the rest of that community is going to have to get minimal. And instantly you're in a competitive environment that becomes hostile. And I think Drucker hit that right many years ago. And I think conscious capitalism focuses on that. I'm going to quickly go through it. If I could go, let me talk then about the next thing, which, many people ask me all the time, hey, what's the secret to Trader Joe's? My gosh, such a successful company. It's just like, what's the secret? Well, first of all, I don't think there is, quote, a secret. But if there is one, I put this slide up and say, here it is. This is the secret to every great company, and that is culture. Culture is that one thing. It's like your DNA that no one can copy. Drucker again would say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. That so often we as business leaders spend so much time on strategy. We go to strategy retreats and 5-year strategy plans and strategic this and that. Almost no real attention and time is spent on culture. But it's culture that's really critical. It's the way business is really done, the way the decisions are really made. It is, in a way, the saying goes that if character is a man's destiny, then culture is a company's destiny. And what you need in companies, certainly conscious companies, is you need to create the cultures that allow for trust, that allow for care, that allow for us to recognize that we're human beings. We're not engaging simply in an economic exchange. We don't have to go to work with one set of values, then go home and take a ethical cleansing and have a different set of value for our family, friends, and neighborhood. That business can and should represent those key core values that are human, that are our highest values. So I think that Wall Street Journal had recently, last month, a story that was quite interesting. It was the relationship between corporate culture and performance. And surprisingly, it didn't take a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's or some of these other people point out, oh, that's different. They studied auto dealerships. And what they found was that there was a dramatic relationship between positive cultures and performance. And it was the culture that causes the performance, not vice versa. You don't first have great performance and then create a positive culture because, hey, everything's going so awesome, now we can afford to be loving and trusting and caring and, et cetera. That it's the opposite. You start with a positive culture and it actually boosts performance. So what I enjoy about this is that it's not just, some woo-woo statement from, some thought leader somewhere. This is the Wall Street Journal. This is in the business section. It was in May. And it was a extensive period of research. It took a couple of years, and they did it with hundreds of auto companies and came back, auto dealers, saying very clear relation between corporate culture and performance. So one of the things I do think is really critical to talk about is no matter what business you're in, whether you're a conscious business or not, you're either innovating or you're dying. And that you are either able to adjust and adapt to the changes in front of you and in the marketplace and your customers, or you're getting left behind. So one of the things about conscious cultures is because they have an atmosphere of trust, they allow for more risk taking. When you take more risk, you're willing to accept appropriate failure. And with that, you're able to, with risk, innovate. So the couple of things about and I put this slide up here about the Harvard Business Review and failure because after I graduated from Trader Joe's 8 years ago, I did a fellowship for a couple of years at Harvard, the end of which the editor of the Harvard Business Review gave me a phone call and said, "Hey, we'd like to do a little, a little feature story, little story on you." I thought, "Oh my gosh, wow, Harvard Business Review, isn't this great?" And you can see the sort of punchline here. So, yeah, we're doing it's called the failure issue. And immediately I was like, and I represent that in which way? But it really was about anyone, no matter where you are and what you've done, you've learned from mistakes, you've learned from failures. And I think that great companies, conscious companies, not only learn from, they can embrace appropriate failure and risk-taking. So a couple of things about failure very quickly, I think, and then we can move on. One is you got to have a sense of freedom. So there's a slide that's up right now that shows that LRN, which is a company out of New York, Dov Seidman, wrote a book called How, wonderful book, highly recommend, that went out and studied large companies. These are companies of over $1 billion in sales and 1,000 employees across many industries and countries, and had them self-report. And this was also done, by the way, independently through a survey firm out of Berkeley, is very highly rated. That says, what is the degree of freedom you feel? High, moderate, or low. Freedom to do things and freedom from things. Your freedom to create and innovate, and freedom from just bureaucratic nonsense or from fear about this or that. Turns out, both in financial performance, innovation, and long-term success, the higher level of freedom you feel, you dramatically outperform the marketplace. So a lot of people, again, would look at this, and so the next slide I put on is a picture of Trader Joe's, and a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, this place is a great place to shop, and it's so much fun, and what's the secret and stuff." And to me, it's like it's a company that sells some really cool stuff, but milk, eggs, and bread. At the end of the day, it's food, but it's how it does it. It's not just what you do. I think conscious companies spend a lot of time recognizing not just the what or even just the why, but the how you do it really matters. So when I graduated from Trader Joe's, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do next. I got involved with conscious capitalism almost immediately. It was, in conscious capitalism, as you may know, is a term that was first used back in the 1990s. There was a book on it, but it never got any credence. It was used in a different context. And then in about 2005 or 6, Muhammad Yunus used the phrase as to one of the ways in which he regarded business. And of course, he didn't create conscious capitalism, but that phrase stuck. And John Mackey and Rauch and a couple other people started using this. And it stuck with this idea of business as a force for good. Business and capitalism, when it has these 4 tenets working in it, and it really is a force for good. And so that term has been around for a while, but of course the practice of it has been around for a long time. So I'll spend a moment on Daily Table because this is a way in which I want to also highlight that as much as I am a proponent and I'm an unabashed capitalist and love for-profit companies, they're not the only way in which conscious businesses are done. Conscious businesses can also be done as nonprofits. That we need and need both government and nonprofit to work in very conscious ways. So Daily Table, as Maureen mentioned at the very beginning, is really designed around tackling this tough issue of hunger and food insecurity that 49 million Americans suffer from. It turns out, and I'll cut to the chase on all this, turns out that really there's this issue of 30 to 40% of what we grow is wasted. We're not using it. And so really, you're getting ahead of yourself. Go back. And so the problem with food waste is that narratives matter. Just like conscious capital, just like business, narratives matter. That the food that we're growing, the 30 to 40% that's being wasted, is really wasted food. And so Daily Table goes out and collects the excess from produce markets. Like yesterday, we got 2 pallets of mangoes that were just starting to ripen, but they weren't rock hard. Couldn't ship them to a grocer, so we took them. And we'll get produce, we get product that's excess inventory, that's shorter codes, not out of code product. We'll bring it into an inner city. We create a retail market that we then We then sell this product in a very open, clean environment. So we're really a hunger relief agency masquerading as a retail store, but we're letting the marketplace and marketplace dynamics basically remove the stigma of being in poverty, of being food insecure. So you can come in and shop, and you can get product that is nutritious, that is quick grab-and-go meals. We have a kitchen that produces about 40% of what we sell. And you can do this in a manner that provides you a sense of when you walk out that you provided for your family. Everything we do meets SNAP. It all meets nutrition guidelines set by Harvard School of Public Health, et cetera. And it's done in a manner that hides all of that, so they just feel they're shopping for food and they're getting what they want to get: produce, meals, dairy. This photo is right after we opened. By the way, that's linoleum floor. We couldn't possibly afford hardwood floors, but you can get linoleum that looks nice and warm and looks like wood. And so since we've opened, our sales have gone up about 2.5%, 2.5 times, and we have about 10,000 members now that use our services. What I use as an example, this is an instance of using the marketplace, using the fact that when people can freely choose what they want, that by voluntary exchange, they come to Daily Table to shop as though they're shopping, instead of us being a food pantry where they come to get a box or a handout or something. And they then, when they buy it, they're more likely to use it. They're more psychologically engaged in it. But they also get reaffirmed as a human being. We have a warm staff that works with them to create a very friendly atmosphere. So I think that, finally, as a summary on conscious capitalism, there was a photo I got when I was with Trader Joe's. I stuck up on my cubicle that a customer had sent me in, and it's kind of like a cat video for me. It's my version of a cat video. I'm not a cat video person, but this to me is about, it would remind me why we're in business. We're in business because business at the end of the day, when it's done right, not only is long-term thinking instead of just short-term quarterly results. You're looking at not what's just good for this year, but also that the wake I'm leaving, the legacy I'm leaving is going to have a positive impact. But you also are recognizing the business itself can provide shelter, can provide comfort, can provide meaning to those that engage with you. And I think that's the essence of what a conscious business and what conscious capitalism is about. So Kevin, that'd be my quick 100-floor elevator speech.
You did a great job in just a few minutes. There's a lot more that can be shared, and I would also invite any of our listeners who are interested in the conscious capitalism movement. At the end of our presentation, you'll get some websites for our chapters that will help you with more information on how to learn more about what conscious capitalism is and some of the other details. But Doug, one of the things in the chapters that we're always faced with, because our job out here is not only to take the macro message like you just so well presented, but let's get into the head of the CEO here. Since you're a founder, go back to the Daily Table model just for a few minutes and talk about, well, where did the purpose of that evolve? How did that evolve in you, your team? How did the conscious capitalism pillars, the conscious leadership, conscious culture, stakeholders, and so on, how did that come into the conversation so that you and your folks actually built a more conscious business? Just talk to us a little bit about that as an example of how to apply conscious capitalism.
Yeah, okay. Well, and I won't make this too Daily Table centric because I think it's important for everyone else to be able to relate to this. So I think that, first and foremost, I'm a strong believer in Viktor Frankl's, A Man's Search for Meaning, point of view that happiness is not something we successfully achieve by pursuing it. Happiness is something that ensues when we're engaged in meaningful activity and a meaningful life. And that for most of us, meaning comes when you are engaged in something larger than yourself.